The interrogation room stank of blood and fear. Kaedan Blackriver stood motionless in the shadows, watching the prisoner bleed. The man was young, maybe 23, wearing the tattered remains of a Frostborn scout uniform. His left eye was swollen shut. 3 fingers on his right hand bent at angles that nature never intended. Kaedan had not touched him. He never did. That was what the interrogators were for. He simply observed, cataloging every flinch, every shallow breath, every micro-expression that betrayed a lie before the words left the prisoner's split lips. "Again," Kaedan said, his voice carrying the weight of glacial stone. The interrogator, a scarred veteran named Torvin, pressed his thumb into the prisoner's dislocated shoulder. The scream echoed off wet stone walls. Somewhere above them, in the civilized world of the Mordain capital, citizens went about their evening routines. Down here, in the bowels of the Iron Spire fortress, truth was extracted with pliers and patience. "I told you everything," the prisoner gasped. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. The supply route, the rotation schedule, the weak point in the eastern perimeter. "What more do you want?" Kaedan stepped into the torchlight. At 32, he carried himself with the controlled violence of a man who had killed more people than he could remember, and remembered every single one. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing a face that might have been handsome, if not for the coldness in his amber eyes. Those eyes, the mark of Mordain royalty, had witnessed his mother's murder at age 8. They had watched his first mate die 5 years ago. They had stopped seeing people as people somewhere along the way. "I want," Kaedan said, leaning close enough that the prisoner could smell the wine on his breath, "to know why your people are moving supply lines 50 miles south. There is nothing there, no strategic value, no settlements to raid. So why are your commanders burning resources to fortify empty forest?" The prisoner's good eye widened, just a fraction, just enough. "I don't know what you mean." "You do." Kaedan straightened, nodding to Torvin. "He knows exactly what I mean. He is simply deciding whether the truth is worth more pain." Torvin reached for a new implement, something with hooks, and the prisoner broke. "Biological weapon." The words tumbled out in a rush. "King Aldric is developing something, a plague. We are supposed to be ready to move supplies south because that is where the wind blows toward Mordain when winter comes. That is all I know, I swear on my wolf. That is all they told us." Silence filled the chamber like water filling a drowning man's lungs. Kaedan studied the prisoner's face, watched the pulse jumping in his throat, noted the genuine terror in his expression. The man believed what he was saying. That did not make it true, but it meant someone wanted him to believe it. "Your father killed your first mate, not us." The words came from the prisoner's mouth, but they hit Kaedan like a physical blow. His hand moved before his mind could catch up, closing around the young scout's throat. "What did you say?" The prisoner choked, eyes bulging, but managed to gasp out, "Please, they told us to say that. They said if we were captured, to tell the crown prince that his father, not Frostborn, not King Aldric, his own father killed the she-wolf Alara 5 years ago because she found out about the pact, about the blood oath that was broken. Please, I am just a messenger." Kaedan's grip loosened, not from mercy, from shock. The prisoner sucked in air, coughing. "They said you deserve to know. They said we are all pawns in their game. They said—" The knife appeared in Kaedan's hand with practiced efficiency. One thrust, angled upward beneath the rib cage, directly into the heart. The prisoner's words died with him, collapsing into a wet gurgle. Kaedan held the blade steady until the light faded from the man's eye, then withdrew it with a sound like a kiss. "Dispose of him," Kaedan told Torvin, wiping the blade on the dead man's uniform. "Burn the body. Tell no one what he said." "Sir, if there is truth to his words, then I will find it myself." Kaedan sheathed the knife. "And Torvin, if I discover you have spoken of this to anyone, even your wolf, I will make what you did to this man look like a kindness." He left the interrogation chamber, climbed 3 flights of spiraling stone stairs, and emerged into the corridor that connected the fortress dungeons to the royal wing. Guards snapped to attention as he passed. Servants pressed themselves against walls, eyes downcast. The Crown Prince of Mordain did not encourage familiarity. The War Council was already assembled when Kaedan entered the chamber. The room was circular, designed so that no seat held advantage over another, though everyone knew where true power resided. At the table's head sat King Theron Ironjaw, 58 years old, and carved from the same unforgiving stone as his kingdom. Gray streaked his black hair. Scars mapped his knuckles, his forearms, the left side of his face where an explosion had nearly killed him 20 years ago. To the king's right sat Castellan Vorian, royal advisor to Mordain for 3 decades. Vorian was slender, where Theron was broad, soft-spoken, where Theron commanded. His hair had gone completely silver, and his hands, folded on the table, bore no calluses. A politician, not a warrior, but arguably more dangerous for it. The other council members represented the great houses of Mordain: Lord Gavric, commander of the Eastern Legions; Lady Ashenna, master of intelligence; Lord Corvin, keeper of the treasury. And at the table's far end, as if deliberately placed at maximum distance from the king, Commander Marcus Steelheart. Marcus was 45, a veteran who had fought in every major engagement of the 30-Year War. His face was a testament to survival, decorated with scars that told stories his mouth refused to speak. Unlike the others, Marcus did not stand when Kaedan entered. They had known each other too long for such formalities. "You are late," Theron said. "I was extracting intelligence from our guest." "And?" Kaedan took his seat, the chair to his father's left. "Frostborn is moving supply lines south. The prisoner claimed King Aldric is developing a biological weapon." The council erupted in murmurs. Vorian leaned forward, concern painting his features. "Did you believe him?" "I believed he believed it." Kaedan poured himself wine from the carafe at his elbow. "Whether it is truth or disinformation remains to be determined." "This is exactly what I have been warning about," Theron said, his voice cutting through the noise like an axe through bone. "Aldric Frostborn is desperate. His kingdom suffers. His people starve. A cornered wolf bites hardest. A cornered wolf also becomes reckless," Kaedan countered. "If he truly is developing a weapon, he would not be so obvious about his supply movements. This has the stench of bait." "You think he wants us to see it?" "I think someone wants us to see it." Kaedan met his father's eyes. "The question is who benefits from renewed hostilities?" Theron's jaw tightened, a sign those who knew him recognized as barely contained fury. "I will tell you who benefits. The man who murdered your mother. The man who has spent 30 years pretending to want peace while preparing for war. Aldric Frostborn benefits from our hesitation, our caution, our weakness." The word hung in the air like an accusation. Kaedan felt the council's eyes on him, waiting to see how the prince would respond to being called weak by his own father. "Caution is not weakness," Kaedan said quietly. "It is strategy." "Strategy?" Theron stood, his chair scraping against stone. "I will tell you about strategy. 30 years ago, during what was supposed to be a sacred celebration, Aldric Frostborn sent assassins into this very fortress. They came through tunnels we did not know existed. They came during the Moon Festival when we lowered our defenses as tradition demanded. And they came for your mother." Kaedan had heard this story 1,000 times. That did not make it easier to hear. "I was in a council meeting," Theron continued, his voice dropping to something raw and ragged. "Your mother, Queen Cassandra, was alone in her chambers. You were 8 years old, playing in the gardens. The assassins took her by the hair. They cut her throat. They left her to bleed out on the marble floor while they escaped back through their tunnels. By the time I reached her, she was already cold." The king's hands, pressed flat on the table, trembled. Kaedan had seen his father face charging enemy battalions without flinching. But this memory, this ancient wound, still had the power to make Theron Ironjaw shake. "She begged them," Theron whispered. "The guards found her journal later. She wrote about it, about having premonitions. She dreamed of her death for weeks before it happened. She knew Aldric was coming for her. And she begged them to spare you, to spare our son. And Aldric's assassins laughed as they murdered her." Vorian placed a hand on the king's shoulder. "My lord, perhaps—" "No." Theron shrugged off the touch. "My son needs to understand. He needs to remember why we fight, why we must strike first, strike hard, and strike without mercy." Kaedan met his father's gaze and saw something he recognized, something that looked back at him from mirrors. The desperate grief of a man trying to outrun ghosts. "I remember Mother's death," Kaedan said. "I remember finding her body. I remember the smell of blood. I remember your scream when you saw her. I have never forgotten, Father, but I also remember what Alara used to say." Theron stiffened at the name. The council members shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke of Alara, not since her death 5 years ago, not since Kaedan's first mate had died in what was officially recorded as a Frostborn ambush. Alara said, Kaedan continued, that grief should sharpen our minds, not cloud them. She said rage makes us predictable. She said, Alara is dead. Theron cut him off. Killed by Frostborn soldiers while trying to broker peace. So perhaps her philosophy was flawed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Kaedan rose slowly from his seat. When he spoke, his voice carried the ice of northern mountains. Alara died because someone betrayed her location to the enemy. Someone knew she would be at that crossroads, at that specific hour, unguarded. Someone sold her to Frostborn. And I have spent 5 years wondering who. What are you implying? Theron demanded. I am implying nothing. I am stating facts. Alara's death was too convenient, too precise. And now, 5 years later, a prisoner tells me that Frostborn is not responsible. Kaedan paused. He tells me to look closer to home. Vorian stood, his expression one of practiced diplomacy. My prince, the words of a tortured prisoner, were cut short when I killed him. Kaedan finished. So no one else needs to worry about what else he might have said. Marcus, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. Boy. It was what he always called Kaedan, had called him since he was a child sneaking into the training yards. Careful, you are walking a dangerous path. Truth is always dangerous, Kaedan replied. That is how you know it matters. Theron slammed his fist on the table. Enough. This council was called to discuss strategy, not to indulge conspiracy theories. Lord Gavrick, what is the status of our eastern forces? The military discussion that followed was technical, detailed, and entirely focused on offensive operations. Troop movements, supply lines, weak points in Frostborn's border defenses. Kaedan listened with half his attention, the other half replaying the prisoner's final words. Your father killed your first mate. It was absurd. Unthinkable. Theron Ironjaw was many things. Rigid, unforgiving, obsessed with vengeance, but he would never harm his own son's mate. The mate bond was sacred among their kind. Breaking it, interfering with it, was the deepest taboo. Unless there was something Alara had discovered, something worth killing her to keep hidden. Prince Kaedan. He surfaced from his thoughts to find the entire council staring at him. I asked, Theron said with forced patience, for your assessment of the proposed offensive. Kaedan had not heard a word of the proposal. He could read it in his father's expression, in the way Vorian's mouth twitched with barely concealed satisfaction. They were testing him, waiting for him to fail. I would need to review the detailed logistics before committing to an assessment, Kaedan said smoothly. Commander Steelheart, what is your opinion? Marcus's scarred face revealed nothing. I think we are planning a war based on the word of a dead scout who may have been fed false intelligence specifically to provoke this exact response. I think we are making decisions driven by emotion rather than strategy. And I think, with all respect to my king, that we are about to walk into a trap. The silence that followed could have frozen blood. Theron's voice when it came was dangerously soft. Commander Steelheart, you have served this kingdom for 25 years. You have my respect. But you will not question my decisions in open council. Then I will question them in private, Marcus replied, matching his tone. As is my right as a sworn shield to the Crown Prince. The title was ancient, rarely invoked. A sworn shield owed allegiance to the prince first, the king second. It was a check against tyranny, a way to ensure the heir had counsel independent of the monarch's influence. Theron had granted Marcus the position himself, 15 years ago, never imagining the old soldier would actually use it. Very well. Theron stood, the motion dismissing the council. This meeting is concluded. Prince Kaedan, Commander Steelheart, you will remain. The others filed out quickly, grateful to escape the tension. Vorian lingered in the doorway, but Theron waved him away. When the heavy oak doors closed, leaving the three of them alone, the king seemed to deflate. Kaedan. Theron's voice had lost its edge. Now it simply sounded tired. I know you doubt. I know you question. You have always had your mother's mind, sharp and seeking. But you must trust me. Aldric Frostborn is our enemy. He always has been. Tell me about the blood oath, Kaedan said. His father froze. What? The prisoner mentioned a blood oath, a pact that was broken. What did he mean? Theron exchanged a glance with Marcus. Something passed between them, something that made Kaedan's instincts scream. There was no blood oath, Theron said. But his eyes, for the first time Kaedan could remember, could not hold his son's gaze. Father, there was no oath. The king's voice hardened back into command. You are dismissed. Kaedan did not move. You are lying to me. I am your king. You are my father. Kaedan stepped closer. And you are lying. I can see it. What are you hiding? For a moment, Theron looked every one of his 58 years. The scars, the gray hair, the weight of 3 decades of war, it all seemed to crush down on him at once. He reached out, placed a hand on Kaedan's shoulder. My son. Some truths are more dangerous than lies. Some secrets are kept not from cruelty, but from love. Trust that everything I have done, every decision, every sacrifice, has been to protect you and this kingdom. Even Alara's death? Theron's hand dropped. What did you say? Was her death part of protecting me? Part of protecting the kingdom? The slap came fast, Theron's open palm connecting with Kaedan's cheek with enough force to snap his head sideways. The sound echoed in the empty chamber. Kaedan tasted copper. You will never, Theron hissed, speak of such things again. Alara died because of Frostborn, because of Aldric, because I was not fast enough to save her, just as I was not fast enough to save your mother. Do not compound my failures by dishonoring her memory with baseless accusations. Kaedan touched his split lip, looked at the blood on his fingers. When he met his father's eyes, his voice was colder than it had ever been. I am done being your weapon. He turned and walked toward the doors. Kaedan. He stopped, but did not turn around. You are my son, Theron said quietly. My only son, the only piece of Cassandra I have left. Everything I do is for you. Then tell me the truth. Silence. Kaedan pushed through the doors and did not look back. Marcus caught up with him 3 corridors later, in a deserted section of the fortress where servants rarely ventured. The old soldier moved with surprising quiet for a man his size. You should not have pushed him like that, Marcus said. He is hiding something. Of course he is hiding something. The man has more secrets than the fortress has stones. Marcus leaned against the wall, studying Kaedan with eyes that had seen too much. The question is whether you are ready for the answers. Kaedan's jaw tightened. What do you know? I know that 30 years ago, King Theron and King Aldric were not enemies. Marcus spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. I know they fought together once, before you were born. I know there was a ceremony, a bonding, the kind of thing that happens between warriors who save each other's lives. A blood oath. I did not say that. But it is what you mean. Marcus did not confirm or deny. I also know that something happened. Something that broke whatever bond existed. And in the aftermath, both kingdoms descended into war. What happened? That, Marcus said, is a question for your father, or for Aldric Frostborn. But I suspect neither will tell you. Kaedan stared at the floor, at the worn stone beneath his feet. The prisoner said my father killed Alara, that she found out about the pact, about the broken oath, and you killed the prisoner before he could elaborate. I had to, if word spread. If word spread, you would have to face the possibility that it is true. Marcus pushed off the wall. I loved Alara too, boy. She was good for you. Made you remember there was more to life than vengeance. When she died, a part of you died with her. The mate bond, Kaedan whispered. The mate bond, Marcus agreed, is supposed to be sacred, unbreakable. But I have seen enough in my years to know that sacred things are broken every day by those who claim to protect them. If my father killed her, then you have a choice to make. Revenge or truth. You cannot have both. Kaedan looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean that if you pursue this, if you dig into old wounds and older secrets, you will find things that cannot be unfound. You will learn truths that will destroy everything you believe. Your father, your kingdom, your purpose, everything. Maybe everything needs to be destroyed? Marcus smiled, but it was a sad expression, spoken like someone who has never actually watched a world burn. Before Kaedan could respond, footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. Both men tensed, hands moving to weapons, but it was only a messenger boy, breathless from running. My Lord Prince, the boy gasped. Commander Steelheart, you are summoned to the southern watchtower, immediately. Why? Marcus demanded. Prisoner, sir. They caught a Frostborn agent trying to cross the border. But this one is different. This one claims to be a defector. Kaedan and Marcus exchanged glances. A defector, Kaedan repeated. How convenient. Very, Marcus agreed. Shall we go see what fresh lies Frostborn has prepared for us? They followed the messenger through the fortress, downstairs and across courtyards, until they reached the southern watchtower that overlooked the border region. The landscape beyond was harsh, all jagged rocks and sparse vegetation, the kind of terrain that punished the unwary. In the tower's holding cell, guarded by 4 soldiers with drawn blades, sat a woman. She was perhaps 26, with dark hair cut short, practical rather than fashionable. Her clothes were travel-worn, bearing the dust of hard miles. What struck Kaedan immediately was her eyes. They held no fear. She studied him with the same calculating assessment he was giving her. "Name," Kaedan said. "Seraphina Stormborn." The surname made Marcus stiffen. Stormborn was a minor noble house in Frostborn territory, loyal to King Aldric. "Why are you here?" Kaedan asked. "To defect, obviously. Did your men not explain that part?" Her tone was dry, almost mocking. Kaedan felt something shift in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation. Not attraction, not exactly, but recognition. As if he was looking at someone who understood what it meant to wear armor, visible or otherwise. "Defectors usually have a reason," he said. "I have several. Shall I list them in order of importance or chronological sequence?" "Chronological." Seraphina leaned back against the stone wall, crossing her arms. 6 months ago, King Aldric arranged my marriage to Duke Corbin of the Western Provinces. Duke Corbin is 63, has buried 4 wives, and enjoys hunting more than conversation. I declined. My king was not pleased. "So you ran away from an arranged marriage. Forgive me if I do not find that particularly compelling. I am not finished." Her eyes locked on his. 3 months ago, I discovered something while working in the royal archives. I am a translator, you see. Languages, old texts, that sort of thing. Boring work mostly, until it is not. "What did you discover?" "Proof that the war between our kingdoms was not started by Mordain assassinating Queen Cassandra. Proof that the tunnels your people allegedly used do not exist. Proof that the entire story your father has been telling is a fabrication." The cell went utterly silent. Kaedan's hand moved to his sword hilt. "You are lying." "Am I? Then why does your heart race? Why does your wolf stir?" Seraphina stood, moving with a predator's grace. "I can feel it, you know, the way your breath changes when truth hits close to home. You already suspect, do you not? You have been questioning the official narrative. That is why you are here. Why you did not simply let your guards execute me. You know nothing about me. I know you are Crown Prince Kaedan Black River. I know you lost your mate 5 years ago under suspicious circumstances. I know you have spent those 5 years wondering, doubting, searching for answers that no one will give you." Marcus stepped forward. "How could you possibly know any of that?" "Because," Seraphina said, "your first mate, Alara, was not killed by Frostborn soldiers. She was killed by agents of Castellan Vorian, on orders from your own father, because she discovered the same truth I did. And before she died, she managed to get a message out. That message eventually found its way to me." Kaedan's world tilted. The cell seemed to spin. He gripped the bars to steady himself, knuckles white. "You are lying," he repeated, but the words came out weak. "Elara's last words," Seraphina continued, her voice softening with something that might have been sympathy, "were recorded by a witness, a merchant who was traveling the same road when the ambush happened. He heard her scream them before they cut her throat. Do you want to know what she said?" "No. Tell Kaedan the oath was broken with blood, but it can be remade with truth." The world stopped. Those words, that cadence. It was exactly how Alara spoke, the way she phrased things, her love of symmetry and poetry. No one could fake that. No one except Alara herself. Kaedan's legs gave out. He found himself on his knees, the cold stone biting through his trousers. Marcus was beside him instantly, one hand on his shoulder, but Kaedan barely felt it. "How?" he managed. "How do you have this information?" "Because I am not really Seraphina Stormborn." The woman's voice changed, losing the mocking edge, becoming something harder. "That is just the identity I have been using for the past 20 years. My real name is Seraphina, just Seraphina, and I am not Aldric Frostborn's translator." She paused, and in that moment, Kaedan saw the weight she carried, the exhaustion behind the bravado. "I am his weapon, his assassin, his solution to problems that cannot be solved with politics or gold. And 6 months ago, he finally told me the truth about what I really am." "What are you?" Marcus demanded. Seraphina's eyes met Kaedan's, and in them, he saw a mirror of his own brokenness. I am the weapon that ends this war, the biological agent your prisoner warned you about. I am a genetic construct designed by Queen Cassandra of Mordain before she died, created to carry a plague that will wipe out every wolf in Mordain within a year of activation. She smiled, but it was the saddest expression Kaedan had ever seen. And I was sent here to you to be captured, because when you inevitably interrogate me, torture me, and finally kill me, the plague will activate. That is what my blood is designed to do. Die in Mordain territory, spread the contagion, and destroy an entire kingdom. Kaedan stared at her. At this woman who claimed to be a weapon, who knew things only Alara could have known, who looked at him with eyes that understood exactly what it meant to be used by the people who were supposed to protect you. And then he felt it. The pull, the recognition, the undeniable, impossible, devastating truth that made his wolf surge forward with a howl of triumph and terror. Mate. No, Kaedan whispered. But the bond was already forming, already weaving itself between them like threads of fate that could not be severed. He felt her heart beating in time with his, felt her fear and resignation and desperate hope, felt everything she was pouring into him like water into a cup that was already overflowing. Marcus must have seen it in his face because the old soldier swore viciously. Get out, Kaedan ordered the guards. Everyone out, now. Sir, if she is dangerous. Out! They fled. Marcus did not. He stood there, watching his prince with the wary attention of a man witnessing a disaster unfold in slow motion. Seraphina had gone very still. You feel it too. It was not a question. Kaedan rose on shaking legs, moved to the cell door, and did something that defied every tactical instinct he possessed. He unlocked it. You are either the most elaborate trap ever constructed, he said, pulling the door open, or you are exactly what you claim to be. Either way, I need to know the truth, and you are going to tell me everything. Seraphina stepped out of the cell. As she passed him, close enough that he could smell the dust of the road on her skin, close enough that the mate bond screamed for him to pull her close and never let go, she whispered, Your father and mine were blood brothers. They swore an oath of alliance that was supposed to last forever. But someone broke it. Someone wanted this war, and they have spent 30 years making sure no one discovered why. She walked toward the tower door, then paused and looked back. So yes, Prince Kaedan, I will tell you everything, and when I am done, you will wish I had not, because the truth is so much worse than the lies, and once you know it, there is no going back. She left. Kaedan stood in the empty cell, feeling the bond stretching between them like a golden thread, feeling it pull at his heart, his wolf, his soul. Marcus moved beside him. What are you going to do? Kaedan thought about his father's lies, about Alara's death, about 30 years of war built on a foundation of secrets, about the woman who had just walked out of this cell carrying a plague in her blood and his heart in her hands. I am going to find out who killed my mother, he said finally, and then I am going to burn their world down. Above them, thunder rolled across the mountains. The first drops of rain began to fall, and in the distance, in the fortress where King Theron Ironjaw planned his wars, alarm bells started to ring. The game had changed. The pieces were in motion, and nothing would ever be the same again. The rain turned the fortress courtyard into a mirror of broken stone and silver light. Hours had passed since Marcus and Seraphina escaped through the cellars. Hours Kaedan spent maintaining the lie that a Frostborn spy had fled through windows. Hours of watching guards search empty courtyards while the real fugitives put miles between themselves and Ironspire. Now, past midnight, Kaedan stood at the window of his private chambers, watching water cascade from the battlements like curtains of falling stars. Behind him, on his desk, lay copies of the stolen documents from Vorian's archive. Evidence he had reviewed a dozen times, memorizing every damning detail before Marcus had taken the originals with Seraphina. The copies were insurance, hidden in a compartment only he and the old soldier knew existed. The mate bond stretched toward Seraphina like a golden thread, telling him she lived, she moved, she escaped. The sensation was strange. Not the overwhelming compulsion he had felt at first contact, but something deeper. A knowing. As if part of his soul had detached and was walking away through the rain, yet remained tethered to him by invisible chains that distance could not break. He touched his chest where the bond anchored, felt it pulse in time with a heartbeat miles distant. Through that connection, emotions bled both ways. Her fear of what lay ahead, her determination to see this through, her absolute certainty that he would survive the coming storm. "I should hate this," he whispered to the empty room, "should curse whatever force bound me to my enemy's weapon." But he did not. Could not. Because through that bond, he had felt her truth, her fear, her desperate hope that dying as a human being rather than living as a tool might finally make her real. A knock at the door. Soft. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps. Marcus's code from when Kaedan was a boy learning the craft of espionage as if it were a game. Kaedan opened it to find the old soldier rain-soaked and breathing hard. "She is across the border," Marcus said without preamble, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. Safe in Frostborn territory, I watched her meet Aldric's scouts before I turned back. Relief flooded through Kaedan, sharp enough to steal his breath. The bond had told him she lived, but hearing confirmation from lips he trusted settled something fundamental in his chest. "The documents? She carries them, along with something else." Marcus moved to the fire, hands extended toward warmth that failed to chase away the chill of rain-soaked clothes. Aldric sent a message back with her. "For you." He pulled a sealed letter from inside his cloak. Wax seal bearing the Frostborn crest, a wolf's head crowned with ice. The seal was intact, which meant Marcus had not read it. Privacy, even between sworn shield and prince, had boundaries both men respected. Kaedan broke the seal, unfolded parchment that crackled with age. The letter was written on stock that predated the war, when paper from Frostborn mills had been considered the finest in 6 kingdoms. "Prince Kaedan." The letter began in script that was elegant but firm. "Your mate has told me everything. About the archive documents, about Vorian's conspiracy, about the choice you made to let her escape rather than use her as the weapon my enemy designed her to be. I knew your mother, knew her better than history records. We were allies once, your father and I, brothers in all but blood. We swore oaths that should have bound our kingdoms forever. Those oaths were broken through deception, not truth, through manipulation, not choice. Cassandra saw it coming, saw the fracture before it happened. She reached out to me in secret, begged me to help her prevent the catastrophe her vision showed. Together we planned. Together we failed. And when she died, I thought all hope died with her. But she left us Seraphina. Left us a weapon that could destroy, yes, but also a bridge that could rebuild. Your mate is more than plague carrier. She is the key to everything Cassandra could not finish. 3 days from now, I will send emissaries to your border under flag of truce. They will carry proof of Vorian's treachery, documents matching what you discovered, financial records showing payments to mercenary companies from both kingdoms, communications between the twin brothers discussing their orchestrated war. But proof alone will not break your father's faith in his advisor. Theron has built his entire identity around the lie of my guilt. Shattering that foundation will require more than evidence. It will require him to want the truth more than he wants to be right. That is your task, young prince. Prepare your father's mind for revelation. Plant seeds of doubt. Make him question before we present answers. The blood oath between Theron and myself can be remade. The war can end. But only if we are willing to sacrifice certainty for truth. Your mother believed you were strong enough to carry this burden. I hope she was right. Aldric Frostborn. Kaedan read the letter twice more, absorbing not just the words, but the implications between them. Aldric was offering alliance, yes, but also acknowledging that the heaviest burden fell on Kaedan's shoulders. Breaking his father's faith in Vorian would be like tearing out the foundation of a building while people still lived inside. He fed the letter to the fire, watched ink and parchment curl into ash. Some truths were too dangerous to leave lying around. 3 days, he said, turning to Marcus. He wants me to prepare my father in 3 days. Time enough to plant seeds, or time enough to get ourselves killed. Marcus settled into a chair, exhaustion evident in every line of his weathered face. What will you do? Exactly what Aldric suggests. I will make my father doubt. Kaedan moved to the window again, staring out at rain that showed no signs of stopping. But first, I need to understand why he trusted Vorian so completely. What hold does that man have that survives decades of manipulation? Grief, Marcus said simply. Your father has been drowning in it since Cassandra died. Vorian threw him ropes, gave him enemies to hate, battles to fight, purpose to fill the void left by her absence. A drowning man does not question the hand that pulls him from the water, especially when that same hand pushed him in. Kaedan turned from the window. You knew, even then. You knew Vorian was poison. I suspected. But suspicion without proof is paranoia, and paranoid advisors do not live long in royal courts. Marcus's scarred face looked older in the firelight. I have spent 25 years watching that man work, watching him guide your father deeper into hatred while appearing to support him every step. It is masterful in its way. Evil, but masterful. Then we give father something else to cling to, something stronger than hate. What? Hope. The possibility that Cassandra's death was not his failure, that he was victim, not accomplice, that there is still time to honor her memory by ending what she died trying to stop. Kaedan moved to his desk, pulled out fresh parchment and ink. His hand hesitated over the blank page. What words could bridge 30 years of accumulated certainty? What arguments could penetrate walls built from guilt and grief? He began to write, words flowing faster than conscious thought could direct them. Father, the letter began. I cannot stop thinking about what the prisoner said before I killed him. About looking closer to home for Mother's true killer. I know you believe it was Frostborn. I want to believe that too. But what if we are both wrong? What if the enemy we have been fighting is not the enemy at all? I have been reviewing old intelligence reports, old financial records, and I find discrepancies, small things, easily explained, but they exist, and they trouble me. I do not write this to accuse, I write this to ask, to invite you to question alongside me. Because if there is even a chance we have been deceived, even a possibility that Mother died for reasons other than what we believe, do we not owe it to her memory to discover the truth? You taught me that a warrior's greatest weapon is not his sword, but his willingness to see the battlefield as it truly is, not as he wishes it to be. I am trying to follow that teaching. I am trying to see clearly. Will you look with me? Your son Kaedan. He sealed the letter with his personal signet, then called for a page. Deliver this to the king's chambers. Place it where he will find it when he wakes. When the page left, Marcus raised an eyebrow. Subtle. Father does not respond to confrontation. He entrenches, but he does respond to reason wrapped in respect. Kaedan moved to pour wine, offered a cup to Marcus. I learned that from watching him. The harder you push Theron Ironjaw, the harder he pushes back. But invite him to reach a conclusion on his own, and he will defend it as if it were his idea. And if he dismisses your letter, if he brings it straight to Vorian, then we know our timeline is shorter than we hoped, and we prepare for the hard way. Kaedan drank, tasting nothing. But I do not think he will. I think Father is already starting to doubt, already beginning to see cracks in the narrative Vorian has fed him. My letter simply gives him permission to look closer. They sat in silence for a time, listening to rain hammer the stones. Tell me about the blood oath, Kaedan said finally. The one between Father and Aldric. You were there when it was sworn, were you not? Marcus's expression went distant, gazing at memories 3 decades old. I was. Young soldier, barely 20. Your father and Aldric were both in their late 20s, leading forces against the raiders who plagued both kingdoms. They met during a siege at Blackwater Keep, fought side by side for 3 days and nights. I never knew that. Few do now. Records were altered, history rewritten to erase the alliance. Marcus set down his wine cup. But I remember the oath ceremony. They bled onto sacred stone, swore to unite their kingdoms, to end the cycle of violence that had plagued the region for centuries. It was binding, magical, witnessed by powers older than either kingdom. What broke it? A lie. Specifically, the lie that Aldric had betrayed the oath first. Vorian fabricated evidence, made it appear that Frostborn forces had attacked Mordain settlements during a sacred festival. Your father believed it because the evidence was perfect. Too perfect. But by the time anyone thought to question, Cassandra was dead, and the war had begun in earnest. Kaedan's jaw tightened. How many died because of that lie? Tens of thousands. Soldiers on both sides, civilians caught in crossfire, entire villages burned, families torn apart. Marcus met his eyes. And every single death was profit for someone. Every battle fought made someone richer. That is what Vorian understood that we did not. War is the most lucrative enterprise in history for those who supply both sides. Then we end the enterprise, cut off the supply, expose the supplier. Easier said than done. Vorian has built redundancies. Other agents, other manipulators. Kill him tomorrow, and the system he created would survive him. Then we do not just kill the man, we expose the system, make it so toxic that no one will touch it. Kaedan stood, pacing again. Aldric is sending proof, financial records, communications. We add our evidence to his, present it all at once, make it impossible to deny. And your father's reaction? Will determine everything. The next 2 days were a careful dance. Kaedan attended councils as usual, offered tactical advice, played the role of dutiful son. But in private moments, in quiet conversations where Vorian's ears could not reach, he planted seeds. He mentioned to the quartermaster how strange it was that weapons shipments always seemed to cost slightly more than market rates. Wondered aloud to the intelligence master why Frostborn tactics sometimes seemed predictable, as if someone were feeding them outdated information. Noted to the treasurer that war expenditures had remained remarkably consistent year over year, despite fluctuating conflict intensity. Never accusing, always questioning, letting others draw their own conclusions. He watched reactions, saw confusion, saw dawning concern, saw a few officials who looked at Vorian with new eyes, as if seeing the advisor clearly for the first time. On the second morning, Kaedan found a note tucked under his door. No signature, simply a time and place. The Royal Crypts, midnight. He arrived early, hidden in shadows, watching to see who appeared. His father came alone. Theron moved like a man weighted down by invisible chains, each step requiring conscious effort. He stopped before Cassandra's tomb, placed both hands on the stone as if drawing strength from her memory. "I read your letter," the king said without turning. "Read it a dozen times. Each reading made me angrier. Each reading made me more afraid." Kaedan stepped from the shadows. "Afraid of what?" "That you might be right. That I might have spent 24 years fighting shadows while the real enemy stood at my right hand." Theron finally looked at his son, and his eyes were red-rimmed. "I cannot sleep anymore. Cannot close my eyes without seeing her face, without hearing her warnings that I ignored because I was too proud, too certain of my own righteousness." "Father, what did she warn you about?" "Conspiracy. She said there was conspiracy at the heart of the court, said someone was orchestrating events to pit me against Aldric. She had been investigating for months, had evidence, she claimed, begged me to review it with her." Theron's voice cracked. "And I refused, called her paranoid, told her she was seeing patterns where none existed, dismissed her concerns because they threatened everything I believed." Kaedan moved closer, placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "When was this?" 3 weeks before she died. She wanted me to meet with Aldric, wanted us to compare notes, to see if he was experiencing the same inexplicable setbacks, the same convenient intelligence failures." Theron's hands on the tomb were shaking. "I told her it was a trap. Told her Aldric would use the meeting to assassinate me. Told her she was naive to trust our enemy. But she was right. She was right. And I was too blind to see it." Theron turned to face him fully. "Yesterday I reviewed the financial records you mentioned. Reviewed them without Vorian looking over my shoulder. And I found what you suggested I would find. Discrepancies. Money flowing to mercenary companies that fought against us. Payments made for services that were never rendered. Funds disappearing into accounts I cannot trace." Kaedan's pulse quickened. "What did you do?" "I confronted Vorian. Quietly. In my private chambers where no one else could hear." Theron's laugh was bitter. He had answers, of course. Perfect answers. Every discrepancy justified. Every payment accounted for. He even produced supporting documents. Documents I had never seen before, somehow appearing exactly when needed. Which made you more suspicious. Which made me terrified. Because if Vorian can produce perfect evidence for anything, at any time, then how do I know what is real? How do I know which documents in our archives are genuine and which are forgeries designed to support his lies? You compare them to external sources, to Aldric's records, to neutral witnesses. Silence stretched between them. In the guttering torchlight, Cassandra's stone face seemed to watch them both with eyes that judged and forgave in equal measure. "Aldric," Theron said finally, "you have been in communication with him. It was not a question. Kaedan could have denied it, could have maintained the fiction a little longer. But his father was reaching for truth, and lies would only poison the well." "Yes." "Through Serafina. The woman you claimed was a Frostborn spy. She is not a spy. She is... Kaedan hesitated. How to explain what Seraphina truly was? She is complicated, but she brought truth. Evidence that corroborates everything we have been discovering. And you trust her? I trust the mate bond. Kaedan met his father's eyes. She is my mate, father. The bond formed when I captured her. I could no more doubt her than I could doubt my own heartbeat. Theron's expression cycled through shock, understanding, grief. Like I felt with Cassandra. Like that certainty. Yes, then you are even more compromised than I feared. Or more certain than I have any right to be. Theron turned back to the tomb. Your mother would have liked her. Cassandra always appreciated women who refused to be what others expected. Women who chose their own path. Seraphina had no choice in what she was created to be. But she chose what to do with it. Chose truth over obedience. Chose to risk everything to expose the conspiracy. What conspiracy exactly? Theron's voice was carefully controlled. Tell me everything. No more half-truths. No more careful omissions. If I am to trust you, if I am to potentially betray 30 years of certainty, I need to know what I am facing. So Kaedan told him. Not everything about the plague in Seraphina's blood. That revelation would come later. But enough. Enough about the twin advisors. Enough about the financial manipulation. Enough about Cassandra's investigation and what she had discovered before she died. Theron listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When Kaedan finished, the king was silent for long minutes. If what you say is true, Theron finally whispered, then I have been the greatest fool in history. Allowed my wife's murderer to guide me for 3 decades while making war on the one man who tried to save her. You were deceived by an expert. There is no shame in that. There is every shame in that. I am a king. It is my duty to see clearly, to protect my people, to make decisions based on truth, rather than manipulation. Theron's voice rose, echoing in the stone chamber. Instead, I have been a puppet, a useful idiot dancing to Vorian's tune while he profited from my ignorance. Then use that understanding, transform it into fuel for what comes next. What comes next? Truth, justice, an end to the conspiracy. Kaedan stepped closer. Aldric wants to meet, wants to present his evidence alongside ours, wants to remake the blood oath that was broken through lies. And you believe this is genuine, not some elaborate trap? I believe Aldric has as much to lose from continued war as we do. I believe he loved Mother as a friend and has spent 30 years trying to honor what she died fighting for. I believe his interests align with ours. Theron studied his son's face, searching for deception, finding only conviction. Very well. I will meet with Aldric, under flag of truce, neutral ground, 1 week from now. Why 1 week? Because I need time. Time to review more evidence without Vorian watching. Time to prepare myself for what I might learn. Time to quietly secure the loyalty of key commanders in case Vorian attempts a coup when he realizes his influence is crumbling. Theron's smile was grim. I may have been a fool, but I am not suicidal. If we are going to tear down Vorian's empire, we do it with enough power behind us to survive the collapse. Kaedan felt something loosen in his chest. His father was not just accepting the truth. He was planning, strategizing, becoming the king he had been before grief and manipulation had twisted him. I will send word to Aldric, 1 week, the old temple ruins at the border crossing. I remember that place. Your mother and I used to meet there, before we were married, before the kingdoms formalized our union. Theron's eyes grew distant. She said it was sacred ground, neutral, a place where truth could be spoken without fear of judgment. Then it is fitting we use it now. They left the crypts together, climbing stairs toward a world that was about to change irrevocably. At the top, they separated. Theron to his chambers to begin quiet preparations, Kaedan to his own rooms to send word through the mate bond. 1 week. We have 1 week until everything changes. Seraphina's response came like warmth spreading through his chest. 1 week. I will be ready. The next 6 days passed in carefully controlled chaos. Theron reviewed evidence, quietly questioned advisors, secured loyalties. Kaedan maintained routines, played the dutiful son, all while watching Vorian for signs the advisor suspected what was coming. Vorian sensed something. Kaedan saw it in the way the man's eyes tracked him during councils. saw the subtle probing questions designed to reveal if the prince was hiding anything. But Kaedan had learned deception from a master. He gave nothing away. On the sixth night, the night before the meeting, Kaedan stood at his window watching stars emerge from behind clouds. The storm had finally passed. Tomorrow would be clear, cold, perfect visibility for everyone to see the truth revealed. A knock at his door. He opened it expecting Marcus, but found his father instead. Theron stood in the hallway, dressed in simple clothes rather than royal regalia. He looked smaller somehow, more human, more vulnerable than Kaedan had seen him since Cassandra's funeral. "May I come in?" Kaedan stepped aside. His father entered, moved to the window, stared out at the same stars. "Tomorrow I will either begin to redeem 30 years of mistakes, or I will make the greatest error of my life by trusting the wrong people." Theron's voice was quiet. "I do not know which terrifies me more. Fear is appropriate. It means you understand the stakes. I wanted to tell you something. Before tomorrow, before everything changes." Theron turned to face him. "Your mother's last words to me. I have never told anyone what she said. Not Vorian, not the council, no one." Kaedan waited. "She said, tell Kaedan the oath was broken with blood, but it can be remade with truth." Theron's eyes were wet. "I did not understand. Thought it was fever, grief. But she was lucid, deliberate. She made me promise to tell you if anything happened to her. And I failed even in that. Buried her words along with her body, because they did not fit the narrative I needed them to fit." Kaedan felt the world shift beneath him. Those were the exact words the prisoner had said. The exact words Seraphina claimed to have from a witness to Alara's death. His mother had known, had seen everything, had tried to leave him a message that would survive her death. "Thank you," Kaedan managed, "for finally telling me. I am sorry it took 30 years. Theron moved to the door, paused. "Whatever happens tomorrow, know that I am proud of you. Proud that you had the courage I lacked. Proud that you chose truth over comfortable certainty. Your mother would be proud too." He left before Kaedan could respond. Kaedan stood alone in his chambers, feeling the weight of revelation settle on his shoulders. His mother had seen this moment coming, had prepared for it 3 decades ago, had left messages, created weapons, set in motion events that would finally, after so much death and suffering, bring truth to light. Through the mate bond, he felt Seraphina's presence, felt her preparing for the ritual to come, felt her absolute certainty that tomorrow would work. That truth would be enough. He sent his own emotion back, not words, simply feeling. "I believe in you, in us, in the possibility that love and truth can overcome 3 decades of lies." Her response came warm and fierce. "Then let us prove it. Let us show them that hope is more powerful than hate. That building is harder than destroying, but infinitely more worthwhile." Kaedan smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring revelation, would bring confrontation, would bring the final reckoning with Vorian and everything the advisor represented. But tonight, he had hope, had certainty, had the mate bond singing between him and a woman who had chosen to be human rather than remain a weapon. And that, more than any strategy or evidence or carefully laid plan, gave him the strength to face whatever tomorrow would bring. The Wolfking's gambit was entering its final phase. The pieces were in position, the board was set. And when the sun rose tomorrow, the game that had been playing for 30 years would finally reach its end. Victory or defeat, truth or continued lies, freedom or endless war. Whatever came, they would face it together, and that made all the difference. The week that followed felt like holding breath underwater. Kaedan maintained routines, attended councils, trained with his guard. But every moment was calculated, every word measured, every action designed to position pieces for the confrontation to come. Vorian watched him. Kaedan felt the scrutiny like pressure against skin. The advisor was careful, maintaining his mask of grandfatherly concern, but tension radiated beneath the surface. A spider sensing vibrations in a web that was beginning to tear. On the 3rd day, a messenger arrived from the border. Not Frostborn colors, but neutral gray. The colors of mediators who served neither kingdom. "King Aldric has agreed to your terms," the messenger told Theron in open court. "Neutral ground. 1 week from the proposal. The old temple ruins at the border crossing. He will bring 5 advisors. You may do the same." Theron nodded. "Accepted. Tell your king I will be there." When the messenger left, Vorian leaned close. "My king, I must advise against this. It could be an ambush. A trap. With neutral mediators as witnesses? Aldric would have to be mad. Or desperate. A desperate man makes bold moves. So does a guilty one. Theron's voice carried edge. You will accompany me to this meeting, Castellan. I want you there when Aldric presents his evidence. Want to see your face when he makes his accusations. Vorian's expression never changed, but Kaedan saw the fingers of his right hand curl slightly. A tell. Marcus had pointed it out years ago. Vorian's hand would curl when he was recalculating, adjusting strategy. Of course, my king. I look forward to defending my honor against Frostborn lies. The days crawled past. Kaedan spent hours with Marcus, gaming scenarios, planning for every contingency. They knew Vorian would not go quietly. Knew the advisor had spent 3 decades building power structures that would not collapse without resistance. He will try to kill you before the meeting, Marcus predicted. Make it look like an accident. Remove the crown prince who has become inconvenient. Let him try. I have not survived this long by being careless. Survival and victory are different animals, boy. Vorian has killed better men than you. He has never faced a man with nothing left to lose. The night before the meeting, Kaedan could not sleep. He paced his chambers, feeling the mate bond stretch and pull. Seraphina was close, just across the border. He could feel her presence like a second heartbeat. She sent emotions through the bond. Determination, fear, love. That last one surprised him. They had known each other for days, not years. But the bond did not care about time. It cared about recognition. About 2 souls that fit together in ways neither logic nor caution could explain. He sent back his own emotions. Certainty, protection. A promise he could not speak aloud, but she would understand. Whatever happens tomorrow, you are not alone. Her response came like warmth spreading through his chest. Neither are you. Dawn arrived cold and clear. The delegation assembled in the courtyard. Theron in full ceremonial armor. Kaedan at his right hand. Vorian at his left. 3 senior advisors behind them. 20 elite guards for protection. They rode in silence, following the old military road that led to the border crossing. The temple ruins were ancient, predating both kingdoms. Once they had been a place of worship for gods whose names were now forgotten. Now they served as meeting ground for enemies seeking temporary peace. Aldric was already there when they arrived. The Frostborn king sat on a stone that might once have been an altar, surrounded by his own guards. He looked older than the intelligence portraits suggested. 62, with gray threading his hair and lines mapping his face. But his eyes were sharp, alert, missing nothing. He stood as Theron approached. For a long moment, the 2 kings simply stared at each other. 30 years of hate, 30 years of war, all compressed into a single exchange of gazes. Then Aldric did something that made the guards on both sides tense. He smiled. Not mockery, not triumph, simple, genuine warmth. Theron, you look well, all things considered. Theron's jaw worked. Do not presume familiarity, Frostborn. We are here to discuss evidence, not to reminisce. Are we not old friends who were torn apart by lies? Is that not worth at least acknowledging? We were never friends. Liar. The word was gentle, not accusatory, almost affectionate. We bled together at the Broken Pass, saved each other's lives more times than I can count, swore an oath that should have bound our kingdoms forever. Do not pretend those years never happened simply because someone convinced you they did not matter. Theron's hand moved to his sword hilt. My wife is dead because of you. No, your wife is dead because of him. Aldric pointed at Vorian. And we are about to prove it. The Castellan stepped forward, expression perfectly calibrated to injured dignity. King Aldric, your desperation would be amusing if it were not so transparent. You orchestrate this theater, create false documents, and hope to drive a wedge between Mordain's king and his most loyal servant. It will not work. Then you have nothing to fear from examination of evidence. Aldric gestured to Lady Ashlyn, who produced the same leather case she had brought to Ironspire. We have financial records, coded communications, testimony from mercenaries who were paid by someone coordinating both sides of this war. Forgeries, all of it, perhaps. But there is one piece of evidence that cannot be forged. Aldric's expression hardened. Your brother. The ruins went absolutely silent. Vorian's mask cracked. Just for an instant. Just long enough for everyone to see the shock beneath. I have no brother. No? Then who is the man we captured 3 days ago trying to cross into Mordain? The man who looks exactly like you? Who carries documents proving he serves as my chief advisor while you serve Theron? Aldric snapped his fingers. Guards dragged forward a man in chains, identical to Vorian in every detail. Same silver hair, same sharp features, same eyes that had advised kings and orchestrated deaths. Theron staggered backward. This is impossible. This is truth, Aldric replied. Vorian is not one man, he is two, twins separated at birth and placed in each kingdom, working together to ensure eternal war, ensuring that neither side ever gained advantage. That conflict remained profitable. The captured Vorian glared at his brother. You failed. I told you the prince was becoming dangerous, told you to eliminate him. I tried, the free Vorian hissed, but he was too careful, too protected. Silence, both of you! Theron's voice shook. He turned to the advisor he had trusted for 3 decades. Tell me this is a lie. Tell me you are not what they claim. Vorian looked at the king, at Kaedan, at the assembled witnesses from both kingdoms, and something in his expression shifted. The mask dropped completely. What remained was cold, calculating, utterly devoid of the warmth that had fooled so many for so long. Why should I lie now? You already know the truth. Can see it standing before you in chains. He smiled. Yes, we are twins. Yes, we orchestrated your war, and we would do it again. Because war is the only honest enterprise in this corrupt world. It reveals what men truly are beneath their pretensions of honor and nobility. You killed Cassandra, Theron whispered. We did. She discovered our existence, would have exposed us. We could not allow that. Vorian's voice carried no regret, no shame, simply statement of fact. She was brilliant, dangerous, had to be eliminated. She was my wife! She was an obstacle, as was the prince's mate, as is anyone who threatens the beautiful balance we created. Vorian drew a knife faster than Kaedan would have thought possible for a man his age. Which is why you are all going to die here. Today. Guards! The command rang out, but nothing happened. Vorian looked around, confusion breaking through his composure. Guards, execute the prisoners! Silence. Lady Ashland stepped forward. Did you truly think we would bring you to neutral ground without preparation? Every guard you thought was yours has been replaced. Every soldier you believed would follow your orders has been shown evidence of your treachery. No, impossible. I have spent decades cultivating loyalty. You cultivated fear, Kaedan said. Fear of what would happen if they disobeyed. But we offered something stronger. Truth, choice, the chance to serve kingdoms instead of conspirators. Vorian's hand tightened on the knife. He looked at Theron. You would believe them over me? After everything? After everything you have done? Yes. Theron's voice was hollow. You murdered my wife. Murdered my son's mate. Orchestrated 3 decades of death. And you did it while pretending to be my friend. I was never your friend. I was your handler. And you were the most useful fool I ever manipulated. Theron moved then, not toward Vorian but toward Kaedan. Placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Do it, the king said quietly. End this. Kaedan drew his sword, stepped toward Vorian with the calm of a man who had killed before and would kill again. But before he could strike, the advisor did something unexpected. He laughed. You think this ends anything? We are not the only ones. There are others, other advisors, other manipulators. We built a system that survives us. Kill us today, and tomorrow someone else will pick up the work. Then we will find them too, Aldric said. Hunt them down, expose them, break the system you built piece by piece. You will try, and you will fail, because war is profitable, and there will always be men willing to profit from the suffering of others. Perhaps, Kaedan said, but there will also be men willing to die to prevent it. That is the wager you never understood. Some things matter more than profit, more than survival, more than certainty. He moved to strike, but Vorian was faster. The advisor's blade flashed toward Theron's throat. Kaedan intercepted it, steel clashing against steel. They fought in the ruins, trading blows with the precision of trained killers. Vorian was good, better than Kaedan had expected. Decades of carefully hidden skill revealed in every strike. But he was also old, and Kaedan was young, motivated, fighting not just for vengeance, but for the possibility of peace. The fight lasted 30 seconds. Ended when Kaedan's blade found the gap between armor plates, driving into Vorian's chest with the force of 3 decades of accumulated rage. The advisor fell, blood spreading across ancient stone. His twin, still in chains, watched without expression. "Brother," the captured Vorian said. "Brother," the dying one replied, and then he was gone. The silence that followed was total, broken finally by Theron dropping to his knees beside the body of the man who had shaped his life for 30 years. "All of it was a lie," the king whispered. "Every word, every gesture, every moment of trust. All lies." Aldric moved to stand beside him, placed a hand on the shoulder of the man who had been his friend, then his enemy, and might now become his friend again. "Not all of it. The oath we swore was real. The brotherhood was real. Only the breaking was false." He extended his hand. "Let us remake what they destroyed. Let us honor Cassandra by building the peace she died trying to create." Theron looked at the offered hand, at Kaedan watching with cautious hope, at the assembled witnesses from both kingdoms. "I do not deserve peace, do not deserve forgiveness for what I believed, what I did. None of us deserves anything," Aldric replied. "But we choose to build anyway. That is what it means to be human, to fail, to learn, to try again." Theron took the offered hand, stood with help from the man he had hated for 3 decades. Together they walked to the center of the ruins where the old altar stood. Lady Ashlyn produced a scroll, ancient parchment covered in script that seemed to glow in the morning light. "The original blood oath," she said, "preserved these 30 years, waiting to be renewed." The ceremony was simple. Both kings cut their palms, let blood drop onto the stone where gods had once received sacrifice, spoke words in a language older than either kingdom, and something shifted. Kaedan felt it through the mate bond, felt Seraphina respond to the magic being woven, felt the world itself recognize that what had been broken was now being remade. When it was done, both kings were pale. The blood oath was binding, magical. To break it now would require more than lies, would require death. "It is finished," Aldric said. "The war is over." Theron nodded. "The war is over." But Kaedan saw the captured Vorians smiling in his chains. "Is it? Or have you simply created new problems while solving old ones? That plague in Seraphina's blood. What will you do about that? Let her die and kill everyone in Mordain? Keep her alive and live under constant threat?" "That," said a voice from behind them, "is my choice to make." Seraphina stood at the edge of the ruins. She wore simple traveling clothes, hair pulled back, expression calm. Behind her, an old woman with clouded eyes and steady hands. "Mirabelle," Theron breathed. "The healer who examined my guard. I thought you had died." "Retired, not dead, though I am old enough that the distinction hardly matters." The oracle moved forward with Seraphina's guidance. "I have examined the girl, understand what Cassandra created, and I know how to repurpose the weapon." She turned to Seraphina. "Are you certain, child? What you give up cannot be reclaimed." "I am certain. I was created as a weapon. Let me be remade as a bridge." The ritual that followed was complex, required 3 days of preparation at the border temple. Kaedan stayed with Seraphina throughout, feeling the mate bond strengthen even as she prepared to sacrifice part of herself. On the 3rd day, as the sun reached its apex, Seraphina stood in the circle of ancient stones. Mirabelle and 5 other healers worked around her, channeling power into the ceremony. "The plague in her blood can be targeted," Mirabelle explained to the assembled witnesses. "Made to affect only specific genetic signatures. But to power that targeting, she must sacrifice her wolf, give up immortality, become fully human." "And if she does this?" Aldric asked. "The plague will hunt only Vorian's bloodline, anyone carrying his genetic markers. It will end them swiftly, painlessly, and leave everyone else untouched." The remaining Vorian, still in chains, tried to speak. A guard silenced him with a blow. The ritual began. Seraphina's body glowed with silver light as her wolf spirit separated. Kaedan felt it through the bond, felt her pain, her loss, her liberation. Because in losing her wolf, she also lost the compulsion that had defined her existence, lost the genetic programming that made her a weapon. Became, for the first time in her life, fully herself. The light exploded outward, swept through everyone assembled, passed harmless through those untouched by Vorian's bloodline. In his chains, the captured advisor screamed. The plague found him, found every cell marked by his genetics, and killed with surgical precision. When the light faded, Seraphina collapsed. Kaedan caught her, held her as she had held him through so many dark moments. "Is it done?" she whispered. "It is done. The conspiracy is ended. The bloodline eliminated." "Good." She touched his face. "Do you still feel it? The bond?" He did. It was different now. Not magical compulsion, but something deeper. Something that had grown from shared purpose into genuine connection. I feel it, and I will feel it until the day I die. That will come sooner now for both of us, because Kaedan had made his own choice during the ritual, had given up his wolf to walk beside his mate as an equal. Two humans, two mortals, two people who chose 40 years of genuine life over 400 years of existing as pawns. Theron approached as they stood. The king looked at his son, at the woman his son had chosen, and something in his expression broke. "I am sorry," he whispered, "for everything. For the years I wasted, for the hate I cultivated, for failing to see truth when it stood before me." "You were manipulated," Kaedan replied. "We all were. But you broke free, chose truth over comfortable lies. That took a courage I never had." Theron placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "Rule better than I did. Build what I could not, and forgive me if you can." "There is nothing to forgive," Seraphina said. "Only lessons to learn, and futures to build." In the months that followed, the kingdoms began to heal. Treaties were signed. Trade routes opened. Families separated by 3 decades of war found each other again. Kaedan and Seraphina ruled jointly, combining Mordain and Frostborn into something new. Something neither kingdom alone could have become. Theron served as advisor, using his experience to guide without controlling. Aldric did the same from Frostborn. 2 old kings teaching a younger generation how to lead with wisdom rather than pride. And 5 years after the ritual at the border temple, as Kaedan stood watching his daughter play in the courtyard where he had once met Aldric, he felt no regret. Yes, he would age, would die in 40 years instead of 400, but those years would be his own, lived in truth, built on choice. Seraphina joined him, sliding her arm around his waist. "Any regrets?" "Not one. This life, short as it will be, is worth more than centuries of existence as someone else's weapon." "Good, because we are building something that will outlast us, something worth dying for." She was right. The United Kingdom was thriving, growing, becoming a place where old hatreds held no power, where the next generation would inherit peace instead of war. The game was over, the conspiracy broken, and the Wolfking's gambit, played across 3 decades, had finally reached its inevitable conclusion. Not in violence, not in endless war, but in 2 people choosing truth over certainty, love over hate, and 40 mortal years of genuine life over 400 years of being someone else's piece on someone else's board. The sun set over the United Kingdom. In the courtyard, a child laughed, and 2 former weapons, now simply human, watched the future they had died to create finally begin. The end.